Hello everyone, I'm Joel, your host for Talking Trends, where we explore real estate trends as well as other luxury lifestyle trends here in the greater Sarasota area. Today we're on site at 5151 Jungle Plum, new construction, amazing waterfront estate, but we're going to talk a little bit about the changes in the real estate world. I'm sure that most of you have heard about the National Association of Realtors class action settlement. I think it is important to state that no one actually knows how this will impact the buying and selling of real estate. There may be a perception of a radical change. However, I'm not sure that is reality. My goal is to give you a practical perspective, knowing that things will evolve over time. In my opinion, there are two fundamental elements surrounding the changes. The first is the perception that compensation for real estate services is not negotiable. That is a misperception. There are all kinds of agents and brokers that provide different levels of services and different fee structures. The second element is focused on paying compensation to the buyer's agents. There is a perception now that buyers will have to pay this and the amount will fundamentally change. Let's just be realistic. Buyers have always paid for all commissions. They're the ones paying the purchase price, which has covered both listing and buying agents' compensation. So let's dig into the specific changes for sellers. Sellers have typically made arrangements with listing agents to compensate both the listing agent and the buyer's agent. The goal was to incentivize interest and activity in relation to the seller's property. There is a misperception that the changes occurring somehow preclude this arrangement. It is not true. Sellers will continue to have the opportunity to offer buyer's agent compensation. It is a question of strategy and ultimately what produces the best economic outcome. Even if going forward a seller chooses not formally to cover buyer's broker's compensation, there will be situations where the seller is asked to pay it. A buyer's agent may formally request that a seller pay his or her compensation. Alternatively, an offer on the property could be contingent on seller paying the buyer's agent's fee. The practical side again is that nothing has really changed. All the current listings for sale that offered buyer's compensation still do. In my opinion, and for the time being, it is strategic for sellers to offer buyer-broker compensation, particularly when we are in a balanced or buyer-oriented market. Sellers need to consider all possible incentives to set their property apart from the competition. An additional formal change is that any buyer's agent's compensation that is offered by the seller cannot be disclosed in the MLS system. Again, it does not mean it cannot be paid. The practical side is that although it cannot be displayed, you just call the listing agent and ask, or the listing agent can disclose it on their own website or on their broker's website. So now what happens is that before I get a showing request, a buyer's agent calls or texts me and asks, what is the seller offering for compensation? Now let's dig into the buy side. Probably the most prolific change is that now, before an agent can show a property to a prospective buyer, they must have a written agreement in place. Yes, that is right. Before I can show you a property, I have to have a signed agreement in place that says exactly what my compensation will be. I welcome this change. It will most likely bring a new level of professionalism to the business. These agreements can be limited to certain properties or areas, or alternatively can be exclusive. Of course, there will be the ability within that agreement to set compensation. Buyer representation is incredibly important. You are entrusting a person to help you with one of the most important purchases of your life. Compensation should be commensurate with your experience, knowledge, negotiation skills, and the value they bring to the table. It is also important to note that these agreements clearly state that compensation will be reduced by any amount of compensation that seller is offering buyer's broker. So the long and the short is there are changes. The reality is that the practical side of things has not changed materially. It is still one big economic bundle, no matter how you slice it. In the end, the Schemmel Soda Group and Premier Sotheby's International Realty embrace these changes. We strive to turn these changes into better opportunities and better results for our clients. Undoubtedly, these changes will be the subject of many discussions going forward, but I hope these high-level highlights are valuable. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you on the next segment of Talking Trends. See you then.